listen to this podcast, or I'll gut you.
Welcome to Ghostman and Rivera's 2022 horror movie preview. Today we are going to be breaking down not all of them, whatever we can find, a bunch of exciting horror movies coming out in 2022, movies that we're looking forward to, and I'm sure a lot of horror audiences are looking forward to. And don't get me wrong, so many movies get released during the year, there's no way we could have dug them all up, and announcements change as the year goes by, but I think we have a pretty thorough list for the time being.
That's what I love about these podcasts. I think this is our third one now where we do all the upcoming horror that we're looking forward to. And it seems to be a growing list, like more of a massive list every year. And all of them are notable releases, and there's always tons in between that come out. So it's just a great year for horror pretty much every year recently.
Also, our first time we did this, it was a completely bunk list because it was like 2 weeks before COVID hit, and literally, I'd say more than 50% of what we discussed didn't even get released that year, or didn't get released on time, or it still isn't released. So, luckily, we're out of that situation, it looks like, for the time being.
Yeah, it seemed like the delay caused a lot of filmmakers to rethink their ideas, so things started switching around and changing directors and all kinds of stuff.
Yep. So we're gonna get started.
But this year is no different. So many great movies on the horizon. So far, we already had Scream to come out this year on January 14th. We already covered that last week, so check out last week's episode if you want to hear us talk about that one. But I'm going to start out by talking about 3 movies that premiered at Sundance this year. Some big impact for the horror genre at Sundance this year. It seems to always be at least 2 or 3 horror films to really shake up Sundance, and these are no different. The first one is Fresh. It premiered at Sundance on January 20th, and it's coming out on March 4th. It's directed by Mimi Cave. This is her first feature. Before this, she only did music videos for like Vance Joy and Sleigh Bells, like modern alternative videos. And it's written by Lauren Kahn. This is her second feature, and she's done about 22 shorts. So a lot of first features this year for the filmmakers on the 2022 horror list. This one stars British actress Daisy Edgar-Jones as Noah, Sebastian Stan, who played Bucky Barnes in The Avengers. He plays Steve, and Jonica T. Gibbs as Molly. The synopsis is: the horrors of modern dating seen through one young woman's defiant battle to survive her new boyfriend's unusual appetites. It has strong and disturbing violent content, bloody images, and graphic nudity. So I'm guessing her boyfriend's unusual appetites must be cannibalism.
I mean, I can't imagine what else it would be unless it's vampirism. That's the only other one it could be, because I've seen a couple vampire movies recently that seem to be taking it in a different direction. So I'm assuming when they talk about modern dating that this is going to be somehow related to like social media dating, or those type of social media hookups. And one of the things that I find interesting about that is about 5 or 6 years ago, when like the social media horror started like rearing its head, I didn't like it. It kind of seemed so awkward and weird to me, the idea of like social, like the first time I heard of that movie Unfriended, just the title was enough to make me laugh. I'm like, a horror movie Unfriended, it's so horrifying that I got unfriended on a social media platform. Good movie, but I'm sure you could forgive me for thinking that sounded funny. Now, as time has gone on and we're as the era is kind of defining itself, I think it's unavoidable, and I'm starting to kind of come around on the idea of social media horror, and it's kind of reflective of how we live. This is how a lot of horror stories come out today, because of social media. Things happen, scary things happen on Tinder hookups or Grindr hookups, if that's your thing, or whatever. And I kind of like how horror is kind of like adopting, seems more than most film genres, it seems to be adopting the idea of social media as like a big driver for horror, and so much to the point that I would say it's its own subgenre now.
And now it seems strange if you don't have some type of technical stuff like that in there, some kind of social media aspect or modern technology. It seems strange not to be there. It has to be a period piece if it's not there now.
Yeah, because it's not realistic anymore. So it's made a big splash at Sundance. That's really cool. The only thing that it's gonna have a hard time making. Do you know how it's gonna be released?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay, because it comes out March 4th. That's the day that the Batman movie comes out with Robert Pattinson, and the way that comic book movies kind of eat up the cinema. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to it myself, but it's hard for these indie films to compete with these massive tent poles like that, or like this past last year, Guillermo del Toro's film. Disney actually released Guillermo del Toro's film the same day, Nightmare Alley, the same day they released the new Spider-Man movie, which just seems like they were setting it up for failure on purpose because they inherited it from Fox. I'm convinced that just seems too deliberate of a decision. So try to go out and support it.
Yeah, no wonder Nightmare Alley got swallowed up.
Yeah, bad release date. But
so don't you think that for the most part that horror films that make a big splash at Sundance, they're almost always elevated horror films, right? Every now and then you'll get one that's not.
Yeah, I mean, usually because of the type of festival that it is.
Yeah, so the next one sounds really interesting. It's from Finland and Sweden. It's called Hatching. It premiered at Sundance and it's coming out April 29th. This one's directed by Hannah Bergholm. This is also her first feature. And it's written by Liha Rautsi, her first feature as well. So first feature on both the writer and director. It stars Siri Soliana as Tiniha, the 12-year-old gymnast, and Sophia Hekia as her mother. The synopsis is, it's being described as a body horror fairy tale about a 12-year-old gymnast who tries desperately to please her mother, discovers a strange giant egg, hides it, keeps it warm until something shocking hatches from it. So that one sounds pretty interesting.
Sounds pretty interesting to me too. Also seems like body horror is starting to get more into the elevated horror sub, kind of blending more with elevated horror, because I keep hearing more about these elevated horror, body horror art films. Like, I mean, last year Titan body horror movie won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is not something I ever would have predicted, but it seems like body horror is going a little bit more in the art film direction than it is in than it necessarily is in like splatter movie directions.
Yeah, and Titan was excellent body horror film, and yeah. I have a feeling we're going to be discussing that a lot on our best of 2021.
Oh yeah, it's on my top 10. I don't know where yet, but I can tell you it's definitely in my top 10.
Mine as well. The one from Sundance that I'm most looking forward to because of the directors is Something in the Dirt. It premiered at Sundance on January 23rd, but there is no release date yet, but we will report it as soon as it has one. Something in the Dirt is directed by the great Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. They did Spring, Resolution, The Endless, I thought was a masterpiece, and it's written by Justin Benson. The cast is Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead star once again. They star along with Sarah Adina Smith. This cast is really interesting to me. Almost all the cast, this is their first feature film, and they're almost all fellow directors. Sarah Adina Smith, this is her first feature as an actor. She directed the Mother's Day segment on the Holidays anthology film, and she directed Buster's Mal Hart with Rami Malek. And then it also has Wanjiru Nijendu. It's her first feature. She directed several shorts and just directed a zombie movie named Re-Ghost. She plays Levi's parole officer. And then it has Issa Lopez, but I don't think it's the Issa Lopez that directed Tigers Are Not Afraid.
But you did say it's all filmmakers, though, so wouldn't that make her fit right in? Or is that just a coincidence?
I'm thinking it's an IMDb glitch or something, because how many Issa Lopez's are out there that are directors?
That's true.
But another one is Gili Klaben. It's his first feature, and he's the director of The Wave with Justin Long. And then you got Vinny Karan, who was in Spring, Resolution, and The Endless. That's the guy that played the crackhead dude. I love seeing him back in one of these movies. And then C. Robert Cargill, the writer of Sinister, plays a radio host. So it's a very interesting cast. And the synopsis is, when neighbors John and Levi witness supernatural events in their Los Angeles apartment building, They realized documenting the paranormal could inject some fame and fortune into their wasted lives. And ever deeper, darker rabbit hole, their friendship frays, and they uncover the dangers of the phenomena, the city, and each other. I heard this is pretty funny. I heard it has some dark and scary elements. And I heard this is really ambitious for these two directors, writers and directors. I love these guys.
I mean, what I feel like what they specialize in is these really large, like really high concept ideas for films. Normally, you would think that these types of ideas would only work under a large budget, but they managed to make a lot of these films with these very high concepts on a very small indie budget, and they still somehow seem to make it work, which in and of itself is quite an achievement as a filmmaker to be able to pull that off. I have some friends who've seen this already, and they really like it. Also, of course, the great Dr. Rebecca McKendry is very enthusiastic about it and gave it very positive review. Or I don't know, she didn't review it. I don't think she reviewed it yet, but she's had some very positive things to say about it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Because you can always trust these guys to go in a crazy direction. And I didn't even like the last one that they did with Anthony Mackie.
I did,
but I respected how bold it was. You know, I think I like the feel of their work, and especially their writing when they're doing the acting. When those two guys, the two directors, are in the lead roles, there's something about the way they deliver their own material just really grabs me.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that's another big Sundance hit that's coming out soon. So now I get to the chronological order of releases. I'll start with a couple that were released today, actually, on the 28th. It's this one is The Orphan, First Kill. It's directed by William Brent Bell. He directed Stay Alive, The Devil Inside, which a lot of people hated, but I actually liked. The movie Where, and The Boy, which was good but not great. So this could go either way, but it does look promising. The screenplay is by David Cogshaw. He did a Scream TV series and The Haunting in Connecticut 2. And the story is by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, who did The Conjuring 2. This one stars Isabel Furman again as Esther. And Furman is 23, and she's posing as a 9-year-old in this one without any special effects or makeup tricks. The director says it's old school techniques, forced perspective, camera angles, and where we put the light is how they achieved it. And Isabel Furman said that she was looking at some of the dailies and seeing herself as a 9-year-old girl, and she creeped herself out.
That's interesting. I mean, it's not often that you see like a sequel to a movie come out so delayed, like over a decade after the fact. And the fact that she's still able to play this character is impressive, because I've seen pictures of her and she looks like a full-grown woman. She looks like an adult. Like, I don't really see it. So that's pretty cool that they're able to pull it off without any special effects then.
Yeah, and Isabel Furman was saying in the first one she found it challenging to act like an adult when she was actually a kid, and then now she found it was more challenging to act like a kid rather than an adult. So it's an interesting dynamic on play here. Mm-hmm. And then the mother is played by Julia Stiles. She was in 10 Things I Hate About You. And the dad is played by Rossif Sutherland. He was just in Possessor last year. The synopsis is it's a prequel to the 2009 film Orphan. Unhinged woman Lena Klammer orchestrates a brilliant escape from an Estonian insane asylum and travels to America by stealing the identity of the missing daughter of a wealthy family. However, Lena's new life as Esther comes with an unexpected wrinkle and pits her against a mother who will protect her family at any cost.
Sounds interesting. I'm definitely going to check this one out soon.
Yeah, that one sounds promising. I mean, it could go either way, because that director doesn't have a great track record, but he is capable of a good movie. So I'm always optimistic about horror films. Yeah. I'm rooting for it to be good. One that doesn't seem so promising, I'm getting some early reviews that don't sound too great. It's The Requiem. It's written and directed by Levan Kiet. It's a Vietnamese director. This is about his 8th feature. And it stars Alicia Silverstone as Jalen and James Tupper. He's a character actor from Grey's Anatomy as Kyle. The synopsis is it's another killer shark movie. I'm always rooting for another killer shark movie, but they hardly ever come. This one's about a couple on a romantic getaway find themselves stranded at sea when a tropical storm sweeps away their villa. In order to survive, they are forced to fight the elements while sharks circle below.
I'll give it a chance, but I mean, I'll be honest with you. That's probably one of my least favorite subgenres of horror is the killer sharks, and it's for the reason that you stated. They're not good. They're rarely ever good. I mean, the only killer shark movie that I think is genuinely like a great movie is such a cliche to even say it is Jaws. Like that's I feel dumb even using that as an example, but I think it sticks.
I think that the second greatest killer shark movie I think is The Shallows, and it's not the greatest movie. It's nowhere near Jaws, but it's better than anything else.
It's a distant second, though, wouldn't you say?
Way distant.
Yes, let's see. That's why. But we'll see. We'll hope. I mean, I tend to look at a lot of like shark movies as goofy, like Santa Jaws or Sharknado or something like that. I kind of have these B movie expectations, and I don't think that's what they're going for the Requiem. So we'll see. I mean, I don't like that it's not receiving good reviews, but that doesn't surprise me given the track record of what this subgenre is. But
yeah,
we'll see.
I think two really challenging subgenres are killer shark movies and werewolf movies. It seems really hard for a filmmaker to do a really solid entry into either one of those subgenres.
I think it's hard to do a good werewolf story, period. I think that's really difficult. I'm gonna give you one example. Like, this is not even films. In Clive Barker's short story collection, The Books of Blood, my least favorite story in that entire collection, and the one that I was just like boring, is a werewolf story. And I was like, why the hell does it have to be the one bad one have to be bad in my opinion? Some people might like it. It's well written. I just don't think the story is very interesting. But I was like, so yeah, of course, the one that I find kind of boring is a werewolf one. It's a challenge, dude. It's a challenge to make horror movies out of werewolves and sharks.
Yeah, people use it as an allegory for disease too much, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to inject these other...
It's hard to figure out what else to do with it. But I feel like vampire movies do the same thing, use it as allegory for disease, and there's so many fantastic examples of it, though. So
yeah, I guess with vampires, there's more of a romantic aspect to it. You can expand on them better, where a werewolf is more animalistic when he changes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, it's as good an explanation as any.
So another one that could go either way that I'm rooting to be good is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's coming to Netflix on February 18th. It's directed by David Blue Garcia and a screenplay by Chris Thomas Devlin. This stars Nell Hudson as Ruth, Sarah Yarkin, who is in Happy Death Day to You and Eat Brains Love, as Melody. Elsie Fisher, she was in The Axe Murder of Villisca and Castle Rock as Leela. Mark Burnham plays Leatherface. Mo Dunford from The Lodgers as Richter. And Olwen Forere as Sally Hardesty. She brings back the role from the first one. Alice Creech, she's a character actress who has 107 credits to her name. She was in Ghost Story, going all the way back to Ghost Story in the 80s. She was in Stephen King's Sleepwalker. I always remember her as the Borg Queen in the Star Trek movies and TV shows. And she's also great in Gretel and Hansel. She was actually the best thing about that movie. And she plays Mrs. Mick. And John Larroquette reprises his role as the film's narrator, and he provided the voiceover for the original film and its 2003 remake. So they're trying to do everything right on this one.
I mean, unfortunately, Marilyn Burns sadly passed away, so they weren't. I'm sure that she would have been involved, but they're trying to do a legacy sequel, whatever you want to call them, requels, as the Scream or Scream 5 or Scream, whatever you want to call it. So that's like their Jamie Lee Curtis or their Nev Campbell. They can't let that character go, so I understand why recasting it is necessary. If they want it to work like a legacy sequel works, they need that character there. They need some kind of connective tissue to it to kind of tie it together. I'm skeptical of it just because, I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's been a really good Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel since the second one. I think the one with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger is amusing, but I
Yeah.
have like I'll say it's amusing, but I'm not a fan of this as a franchise. Beyond the first one's a masterpiece. Second one's an excellent horror comedy, really bizarre movie too. Such a strange sequel, but yeah, this is like a franchise like Halloween where it seems hard to make good sequels out of it for some reason.
Well, I'm just excited about this one because it's comes from the minds of the Don't Breathe guys, Fede Alvarez and Frodo Arriguez.
I mean, I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to it in spite of my skepticism, only because just as a horror fan, it's nice to see Leatherface back. So I think on some level, kind of like with how I feel with Halloween Kills, even if it's not that good, I'm probably still going to enjoy it on some level.
Yeah.
As I'm
So that
enjoy it.
So that's coming to Netflix. A lot of people are seeing that as a bad sign. Is it's coming to Netflix? I don't think so. Netflix has a lot of good horror films. Not all, but
All right, but the reason people are worried about it is because it got bad test screenings, and it wasn't originally meant to be for Netflix. It was going to be a theatrical release, and the studio lost confidence in it that it would be able to even make its money back or make a splash. So that's the only thing that makes me leery about it being on Netflix. It seems like that was not their first choice, and it was not intended to be a Netflix movie.
yeah. Well, it seems like a good cast, and I like the one that plays Sally Hardesty. She has a cool look. What's her name? Olwen Fiore.
Mm-hmm.
She has a cool look, and she actually looks like an older Marilyn Burns. So
good casting.
And John Larroquette coming back as a narrator. So I'm not I don't have high expectations for it, but I don't have low expectations for it either. I'm kind of rooting for it.
Yeah. I'm probably going to enjoy it regardless, so I'm excited. I'll be watching it the day it drops, I'll tell you that.
I mean, it's got to be better than the last few, right?
I hope.
Please tell me it is.
We'll see.
So that brings us to one we discussed on the podcast before, Slapface. This one's produced by our friend Nick Thurer, who was also in my movie Pay Up. This one comes out February 3rd. It's coming to Shudder, right?
Yes, it's coming to Shudder. Shudder original.
It's written and directed by Jeremiah Kipp. Really experienced writer and director, but he's done mostly short films and TV, so it'll be interesting to see what he does with his first feature. This one has August Maturo from The Nun as Lucas, Mike Manning from The Call with Lynn Shay as Tom, Live Bearer from ICU, that modern giallo from a couple years ago as Anna, Mirabelle Lee as Mariah, Bianca D'Ambrosio and Chiara D'Ambrosio as the twins, Donna and Rose, Lucas Hassel as the monster, our friend Nick Thurer from Pay Up as Deputy Shepherd, and of course Dan Hedaya from Mulholland Drive, Usual Suspects, and I always remember him as Carla's ex-husband on Cheers. He plays Sheriff John Thurston, and check out our podcast where we talk to Nick Thurer. He tells us the whole story about how they got Dan Hedaya on the cast.
I mean,
so
go on.
The synopsis is, after the death of his mother, Lucas, a loner who lives in a rundown home with his brother Tom, regularly seeks solace in the nearby woods. With his only friends being a group of female bullies, he keeps to himself most of the time. After a strange encounter with an inhuman monster, Lucas begins to withdraw from others. The two reach a tentative trust, and the boy is swept up in a series of primal adventures. A bizarre friendship is born. Sounds very interesting.
It's been a hit on the festival circuits. Like, it's been getting very positive feedback on the festival circuit. And I'll admit I have some biases in it. Having a friend that we've worked with, Arkan, he's worked on, is an actor, one of the lead actors in your film Pay Up, and I got to direct him once in a short film. So I have a little bit of bias. I'm just rooting for it to be a success because he's involved, but I'm excited regardless. I think I would be interested in this movie even without our friend's involvement.
And if you listen to our podcast with Nick Thurer, he's really excited about it and truly excited about it. And his excitement is infectious. So it makes you excited to watch it. And I was so proud of him when I heard it was coming to Shudder, because I love Shudder.
Oh yeah. Awesome. I'm excited. I'm totally excited.
Because Shudder not only has a bunch of notable horror releases, it's actually curated. And you can see when you watch a handful of films, like, you just go on there and pick pretty much any film and just watch it. It's well curated. Even if you don't, even if a film doesn't grab you, it's at least quality, at least has something great about it.
Yeah. Definitely.
So that's another good movie coming to Shudder. The next one is kind of a silly movie, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's Studio 666. It comes out February 25th. It's the Foo Fighters horror film. It's directed by B.J. McDonnell, who directed Hatchet 3 and some Slayer videos. And interesting about this director, B.J. McDonnell, he was a camera operator, not the DP, but he was a camera operator on Devil's Rejects, Hatchet, Spiral, Halloween 2007, The Collector, Hatchet 2, Killer Joe, The Darkest Hour, The Collection, Annabelle Creation, The Nun, and Malignant. So this guy knows his shit if he was camera on all those great movies. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what he's done. And the writer is Jeff Bueller. He wrote Midnight Meat Train, awesome movie, and the Pet Sematary remake, which isn't as awesome, but it's fairly well written. And so it's written by him and Rebecca Hughes.
I'm just
and
kidding.
And this is based on a story by Dave Grohl himself. And I actually heard Dave Grohl on the Howard Stern show, and he has this whole story about how the band moved into this house and to record, and he had never had any supernatural experiences in his life, and he kept seeing this very clear specter right in front of his face. It'd be standing in a room when he walked in the room, and then it would just disappear. So this is from a real, this real experience gave him the idea for this movie. And once again, the movie stars Jenna Ortega, who just starred in Scream, and she's also going to star in a movie we're going to talk about in a little bit called X. It also stars Will Forte from SNL, Leslie Grossman from American Horror Story, Whitney Cummings, the comedian, Jeff Garlin from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and of course Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters play themselves. And they look pretty hilarious in this and it looks kind of tongue-in-cheek, kind of doesn't really take itself seriously.
I imagine it would be.
The synopsis is: legendary rock band Foo Fighters move into an Encino mansion steeped in grisly rock and roll history to record their much-anticipated 10th album. Once in the house, Dave Grohl finds himself grappling with supernatural forces that threaten both the completion of the album and the lives of the band. So this one looks really fun. I got my hopes high for this one.
Yeah, definitely.
I just I've been, rooting for Dave Grohl since he was in Nirvana in the 90s. And then I couldn't believe that he actually lightning struck twice, and he became an excellent front band with a very successful band, Foo Fighters. And now he decides he's going to become a horror writer and an actor. So well, I just got to see what this guy does next.
I mean, I feel like horror, rock and roll music in all its myriad forms, whether it's just straight rock and roll or punk rock or metal, is very close to horror.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense to me.
Definitely. The next one, this one looks interesting too. It's called Unwelcome. This is from the UK, and it's coming out March 17th. It's directed by John Wright, who directed Grabbers a couple of years ago. Grabbers is a really cool one because it's about an alien invasion, and the people in this, I believe it's an Irish town, they figure out that the only way to save themselves from the aliens is to be drunk. So it's everybody getting drunk to try to fight these aliens. So it's a pretty cool movie. It's written by Mark Stay and John Wright. The cast is Hannah John Kamen from Resident Evil, Game of Thrones, and Black Mirror. She plays Maya. It also stars Jamie Lee O'Donnell and Douglas Booth. Douglas Booth played Nicky Six in the movie The Dirt about Motley Crue. He was in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and he's also in Limehouse Golem. That's a little movie that flew under the radar. So if anybody wants to check that one out, it's a UK horror film from a couple of years ago. Check that out. It's Limehouse Golem. This guy Douglas Booth stars in that one. The synopsis is: Maya and Jamie escape their urban nightmare of London to tranquility of rural Ireland, only to discover malevolent, murderous goblins lurking in the gnarled ancient wood at the foot of their new garden. Heavily pregnant, Maya is soon targeted by the goblins and the family she befriended after forgetting to make sure the creatures are fed. Who or what will come to her rescue, and what extremes will she go to protect her unborn child? That one sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely sounds interesting.
And knowing if from the director of the Grabbers, it's going to be pretty insane.
Yeah.
This one is one of my most anticipated one of my most anticipated movies of the year, X. It's coming out March 18th from the great Ty West, written and directed by Ty West, who did House of the Devil, The Sacrament. In the Valley of Violence is a good Western that he done with Ethan Hawke. And he also done The Innkeepers, an awesome haunted hotel movie. Once again, this one stars Jenna Ortega from Scream and Studio 666. Mia Goth from Suspiria and Nymphomaniac Volume 2 as Maxine.
And
It's got the... Which
that's
one?
what the movie High Life. I think that's her best
Oh,
performance. I don't
yeah,
think
I forgot
it's
that
with
one.
Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Her, I like a lot as an actress.
She's got a really interesting look to her.
Yeah.
It also stars Kid Cudi, the rapper Kid Cudi. Brittany Snow. If you like Brittany Snow, check her out in The Vicious Kind with Adam Scott. I think that's her best performance. And she was also in Would You Rather with Jeffrey Combs. Stephen Uri, who he played the drunk in Ash vs. Evil Dead, and he is also in Deathgasm. Owen Campbell is a really good actor. He's from Super Dark Times, and he was just in My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. We're probably going to be talking about that on our Best of 2021. And then Martin Henderson, he was in The Ring, The Devil's Knot, and Strangers Pray at Night. He plays Wayne. The synopsis is, at a secluded farmhouse in Texas, that's always a bad sign, a film crew arrives to shoot an adult film. Their host, a reclusive elderly couple, take a special interest in their young guests. As night falls, the couple's leering interest turns violent. This one looks good. It's got a cool atmosphere to it. The trailer looks good. It looks fun. It looks disturbing. Everything I love about Ty West.
It might be my most anticipated horror movie of 2021 as an original horror film, but also get ready for the backlash. This one is backed by A24. Ty West doing an A24 horror film, so you know half of the horror audience is going to loathe it, which means I'm probably going to love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see him do a fun movie like this, where he's prone to do a lot of like super serious movies, are very nuanced and slow burns. So it'll be nice to see him do a batshit one, because he did Cabin Fever 2, which I've always liked, and he doesn't even like it.
Okay. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm excited for it. I like Ty West a lot. I think he's one of the best horror filmmakers working right now. Kind of up there to me with somebody like Mike Flanagan. Kind of like in the same wheelhouse of that type of horror filmmaker, I think.
Yeah.
Hasn't had quite the same amount of mainstream success as Mike Flanagan. But I think he's somewhere in that wheelhouse as far as a horror filmmaker.
And he's kind of flown under the radar a lot, but he's somehow become one of the greats without having a lot of exposure.
That's true.
I think it's mostly because he's loved by filmmakers like us, you know?
That's true.
Like fellow filmmakers who see his craft and really respect it.
Yeah, definitely. So probably, maybe, at the very least, it's one of my 2 or 3 most anticipated horror movies of the year.
Yeah.
Also, always excited for some horror too. Much as I get excited for the franchise stuff and everything I grew up on, I want to hear about original projects like this.
Yes. From great filmmakers like Ty West.
Yes.
This next one, I don't have a whole lot of information on it, so I'll just go over it real quick. It just sounds interesting from a good filmmaker. It's The Devil's Light. It comes out March 24th. It's directed by Daniel Stamm. He directed The Last Exorcism and 13 Sins, both really good movies. Written by Robert Zappia, who wrote Halloween H2O. And the story by In Living Color writers Todd R. and Earl Ritchie Jones. I thought that was interesting. A horror film written by the guys who wrote In Living Color. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
And it stars Virginia Madsen as a nun. Virginia Madsen plays a nun who prepares to perform an exorcism and comes face to face with a demonic force with mysterious ties to her past. So another possession film, but it looks promising.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those genres that's more consistent, I would say, than shark films or werewolf movies. I feel like there's a more reason to get excited for films like that.
Yeah, for sure. Because somebody can always throw us a curveball and do a really good original one, so you never know.
Yeah.
The next one is, I wouldn't normally be excited about a superhero film for the most part, but I'm excited about this one. It's Morbius. It comes out April 1st. It's directed by Daniel Espinosa, who directed Safe House and Life. and it's written by Matt Sazama and Bert Sharpless, who wrote Dracula Untold and Gods of Egypt. It stars Jared Leto as Michael Morbius, Matt Smith from Doctor Who as Loxias Crown, Adria Arjona from True Detective and Belko Experiment as Martine Bancroft, Tyrese Gibson from the Fast and the Furious movies as Simon Stroud, and of course Michael Keaton reprises his role as Adrian Toomas, or the Vulture, from the MCU, the Spider-Man Homecoming movie in 2017. And Corey Johnson will appear in an undisclosed role. Synopsis is: dangerously ill with a rare blood disorder and determined to save others suffering his same fate, Dr. Morbius attempts a desperate gamble. What at first appears to be radical success soon reveals itself to be a remedy potentially worse than a disease. This one, the trailer looks really strong. I'm kind of hesitant about the CG Morbius, because it looks CG and I can't tell how much is practical. So it just depends on how it's going to be in the movement of the movie, whether it looks real or not. But on the trailer, it looks pretty fucking real.
I'm pretty in the middle on it. Morbius is an interesting character. I mean, I grew up a Spider-Man fan, so of course I remember that villain. It just seems to me, and this is just what Sony does, and I mean, I don't blame them. You have a property like Spider-Man. It just seems to me that they are trying to milk every angle of the Spider-Man property that they can with this and the Venom movie. And Michael Keaton coming out in this movie, which I don't understand because I don't think this is supposed to take place in the same Marvel universe as the Spider-Man movies go. But then again, they have a whole multiverse going, so I'm sure that's going to play into it in some way as well. Michael Keaton, Jared Leto, Batman and the Joker. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. We'll see where it goes. It's just sometimes Sony makes some weird decisions with the Spider-Man property. So that's the only thing that makes me leery of what they're going to do with this movie. And Jared Leto has a lot to prove. I think he has to redeem himself from his Joker role, which does not have a very good standing and reputation within comic book circles, or like anybody who enjoys comic book films or comic books is not. It's a universally panned performance. So him doing a Spider-Man villain now, he has a lot to prove. So, and Jared Leto is a really good actor. I just think it was one of those cases where the direction that he was under was not working for him. So let's hope he can pull something off, because I like Jared Leto a lot as an actor, and I feel bad because I feel like ever since he played the Joker in the Suicide Squad, it turned him into a punchline right after he just won an Oscar. And usually after actors win their awards, like when they're Oscars, they go off to like big success and more offers, and it seems like he's kind of turned into a punchline.
Yeah, but he's working really hard on an Oscar this year because he was in that House of Gucci. Oh, okay. He was really good. He became the Gucci guy. He was balding. He was like had a heavy Italian accent. He was kind of bumbling fool. And man, he just completely transformed himself. And it didn't look like a good-looking actor in makeup. He just looked like a nasty old bald Italian man.
This should be interesting because he has a reputation for being a method actor, for acting, going really far into roles, and his behavior on set is weird. As the Joker, I guess he was sending dead rats to people as presents. Yeah. What did he do to prepare for a vampire? Did he drink blood? Is my question.
I know, right? Well, with me, I know it could because Jared Leto is unpredictable. You know, he could either turn in a really bad, cringy performance like the Joker, or he could do something awesome. You never know with this guy.
Like Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly, yeah. But these studios have been playing around a lot with mixing horror with superhero films, and I don't think anybody's really done it right yet. Because every time they start to do it and they commit to it, and then they change their minds, and then they do reshoots, and then it becomes PG-13, and it becomes more of a superhero movie than a horror film. They did it with Doctor Strange, with Venom. You know, they keep teasing us that they're going to give us a nice hard R horror film with superheroes in it.
See, I think there's a lot of potential because there's a lot of great horror comics to begin with. I think that the closest superhero movies to horror are some of the Batman movies, like Tim Burton's and Christopher Nolan's. But even then, those don't really qualify as horror movies. They just have elements in it that would appeal to horror fans. So we'll see if they actually pull it off this time. Blade's a good example.
Oh, there you go.
Blade. Also, I'm still waiting for that Spawn movie. I don't know if that's ever going to come at this point, but I'm waiting. Get on that shit, Todd McFarlane.
Yeah, they kept teasing it off and on for years, and then all of a sudden it got quiet for like the past few months.
Yeah, but we'll see.
Do it already.
Yep.
So my next movie, this is another really interesting sounding one. This one's You Won't Be Alone. It comes out April 1st. This one it's a movie from Australia, UK, and Serbia. And the movie's in the Macedonian language. It's written and directed by Goran Stolevski. It's his first feature. The cast is Numi Rapace. She was just starred in Lamb. She plays Bosica. I really want to see this girl and this woman in another movie after Lamb, because she really knocked out of the park with that one. Alice Englert from Power of the Dog and Ratched as Balana, and Anna Maria Marinka from Girl with All the Gifts as Maria. I like that actress too. The synopsis is set in an isolated mountain village in 19th century Macedonia. You Won't Be Alone follows a young girl who is kidnapped and then transformed into a witch by an ancient spirit. Curious about life as a human, the young witch accidentally kills a peasant in the nearby village and then takes her victim's shape to live her life in her skin. Her curiosity ignited, she continues to wield this horrific power in order to understand what it means to be human.
Definitely sounds interesting. I hadn't heard it until this moment.
Yes, more interesting concepts like that.
Definitely.
All right, and the last one on my list before this is I'm doing the first part of the year, and James is going to take over and do the second part of the year. This one is The Northman. It comes out April 22nd, which is not really a horror film, but it's written and directed by Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse. Pretty much anything coming from this guy should leave every horror fan with his mouth watering, wanting more. This one, stellar cast, dude. Alexander Skarsgård as Amieth, the Viking. Anya Taylor-Joy as Olga. The great Ethan Hawke as Ken Aravandli. Nicole Kidman as Queen Gundun. And Willem Dafoe as Helmir the Fool. And of course, my favorite singer, Bjork, as a seeress. She was originally the Slav witch, so they changed her name to Seeress for some reason. The synopsis is from visionary director Robert Eggers comes The Northman, an action-filled epic that follows a young Viking prince on his quest to avenge his father's murder. This one looks epic. It looks cinematic. It looks gory and violent. And I like to see, especially Alexander Skarsgård playing a Viking. He is such a Viking.
Yeah. I mean, only because it doesn't look like this is a straight horror movie. I'm not calling it my most anticipated horror movie of the year, but it might be my most anticipated movie of the year. In general, I would say, for me personally, Robert Eggers is probably my favorite of the new wave of filmmakers to come out in the last decade. My personal favorite. Just between two films alone, The Witch, which, I mean, not everybody's going to agree with me, but for my money, sorry to people who think it's boring, The Witch is the greatest horror movie of the 21st century, my opinion. And The Lighthouse is a fucking masterpiece. It's wonderful. I love both of them. I think he's phenomenal. And I think that overused term visionary actually does apply to Robert Eggers. So hell yeah, I'm on that cast. It's stacked. My God, what a cast. Yeah. Oh man, I'm going to be there opening day. I'll tell you one thing. I'm really, really excited for that one.
And I don't care what anybody says. The first two movies he came out with, that's the equivalent of 10 movies.
Yeah.
Just bam, right there. Just two masterpieces, like perfect from beginning to end.
Yep. So hell yeah, I'm excited for that. Another movie I'm excited for is another Ethan Hawke movie. Since Ethan Hawke's in this, The Black Phone, coming out on June 24th. This is directed by Scott Derrickson, and he actually left we were talking about that earlier. He was actually on Doctor Strange, the Marvel movie, and he's been replaced by Sam Raimi to come and direct it. And he's actually done the screenplay based on the 2004 short story by Joe Hill. For those who don't know, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. Of course, if you're into horror and you don't know who Stephen King is, what the hell is wrong with you? But yeah, I've never actually read any of Joe Hill's stuff. I've read plenty of his father's stuff, but I've heard good things about him. I hear that he's not like, from what I understand, he doesn't sound like he's ripping his father off. He has his own thing going on, and he's one of the horror authors that's made like a really big splash on the scene. So it'll be interesting to see how an adaptation of his work is. This is from, I think, a 2004 short story. The premise is, in the 1970s, 5 children go missing in a suburban Colorado town. Soon after, Finney Shaw is kidnapped by a serial killer trapped inside of a soundproof basement. Finding a disconnected phone, Finney discovers its ability to transmit the voices of the killer's previous victims, who try to help him escape. Meanwhile, his sister finds she has recurring visions that may help her find Finney. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one a lot. It looks good. It seems like it's going to be an exciting movie. The trailer kicks ass, I can tell you that. And Ethan Hawke is one of our best modern actors. So him as a lead role, as a horror villain with that mask, that design, which I'm sure if you've seen the poster, it's so cool. I'm looking forward to this. I think this is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, that mask is designed by Tom Savini.
Oh, of course.
So cool. And I love Ethan Hawke, not only as an actor, just as a person, as a thespian, as someone who I could just sit there and listen to him talk for hours. He's so smart and puts so much of that intelligence into his roles.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're so nuanced, and especially with horror. So in Sinister, it was great because you felt his fear, because he showed the fear so well. And now he's going the opposite direction. He's going to show evil. I can't wait for this. And this is my most anticipated film of the year right here.
It is?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm surprised the Ty West one isn't.
Yeah, it's just that combination. Yeah, that combination of Scott Derrickson and Ethan Hawke, as much as I love Sinister. And then James Ransom is in this one too, as Max.
Jeremy Davies, Mason Thames as Finney Shaw, Madeline McGraw as Gwen Shaw, Jeremy Davies as Mr. Shaw. Sorry, I forgot to even read the cast off. I haven't listed here though.
And it being a period piece from the 70s, everything sounds just great about it.
Oh, horror is always better when it takes place in the 70s.
Yes.
At least in my view. So the next one is another one I'm really looking forward to. Nope, written and directed by modern maverick Jordan Peele, starring Daniel Kaluuya, returning from his wonderful Oscar-nominated performance in Get Out, Keke Palmer, Stephen Yeun, Barbie Ferreira, Brandon Perea, and Michael Wincott. Monkey Paw Productions. It was released on July 22nd. Now this one, they've really kept this under wraps. I've searched. There is no synopsis for this movie as of yet. The poster is just of like a menacing cloud over a landscape. So there isn't really much to say about this movie because we don't know anything about it. And I think in this day and age of like internet leaks and all that stuff like that happening, and especially with somebody as high profile as Jordan Peele, his last 2 movies were both bona fide blockbuster horror hits. I'm surprised that they've been able to keep it under wraps at this level. Really surprised by that. That's not something I would have expected, but I have no idea what it is, and to be honest, I don't really give a shit because Jordan Peele could make a movie about sliced bread and I would check it out. I'm looking forward to it. I know he has a lot of his haters in the horror community. You can suck it. I love Get Out. I think it's one of the defining horror movies of our generation. I liked Us as well. I know you're not as a fan of that one, but I enjoyed Us. And I just like the flavor that he brings to horror, the perspective that he brings to horror. And I just think he's such a gifted, original filmmaker. He's such a passionate genre enthusiast and has such a wealth of knowledge of the horror genre. So anything he does, I'm going to be there right away.
And I have my problems with Us, but like I said before, Us was so bold, it made me even more excited for his next project, even though I didn't like the last one.
So, hell yeah. Nope. Jordan Peele. Wish I could say more about this, but I don't know that much. But yeah, looking forward to it.
And the name of it makes it way too easy for the haters. Like, oh, Jordan Peele, it's got the right name to it. Nope.
Actually, he picked that on purpose because I think it had something to do with how people react to his movies. The most common phrase that comes up when people like his movies come up is like people type nope because he's filled with so many haters. So I'm kind of excited for that movie.
Just another reason to love Jordan Peele.
Yeah. And I love the haters. I love how much you hate him because it only tells you how good he is.
Yeah.
And it all comes from such a stupid, disingenuous place that I really don't give a fuck. The next movie, going off the rails. Next movie I'm on the list is Salem's Lot, directed by Gary Dauberman, written and directed by Gary Dauberman, based on the novel Salem's Lot by Stephen King. It stars Lewis Pullman as Ben Mears, Mackenzie Lay as Susan Norton, Bill Camp as Matthew Burke, Spencer Treat Clark as Mike Ryerson, Alfre Woodard as Dr. Cody, William Sadler as Kurt Barlow, Palau Asabek, and I'm sorry, I really apologize for butchering these names, as Richard Straker, and John Benjamin Hickey as Father Callahan. I got it, and directed by Gary Dauberman. He's mostly known for the Conjuring universe films like Annabelle, Annabelle Creation, The Nun, Annabelle Comes Home. Admittedly, I'm not too big on those the Conjuring spin-offs. I don't really think that they measure up, but I'm still looking forward to it. It's always good to see a Stephen King property being adapted again, right while his son is getting his own exciting film. I have a little reservations, but first I'm going to give you the premise. Ben Mears is a man who returns to his childhood home of Jerusalem's Lot in search of inspiration for his next book, only to discover his hometown is being preyed upon by a vampire, leading him to band together with a ragtag group that will fight the evil presence. Okay, so I know this is a classic story, and I'm a big Stephen King fan. I have to admit, I have never really been a fan of this book. It doesn't jibe with me for some reason, and I've read the whole thing. I read it front to back. It's not that I didn't give it a chance. I just didn't like it. So I'm actually not a big fan of this story, but I'm actually going to reread it again before I see the movie, just to see if I have a different reaction to it this time, and see what others see, because it's supposed to be one of Stephen King's greatest stories, and I never actually got that out of it. But regardless, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I did really like the miniseries. I believe it was in the 70s with David Soul.
I've never seen the miniseries. I've only read the book. I've never seen any adaptation of Salem's Lot.
But even that one, it should have been just a movie. It shouldn't have been a miniseries, because it seemed to really drag. As much as I loved it, it dragged for long periods of time, but it had a great atmosphere, and it had some really great memorable moments. So I always hung on to those moments over the years, but I always knew that it was like a long kind of tedious kind of watching for that one. So they could easily make it better. And there was already a remake with Rob Lowe, right? That was supposed to be actually kind of good.
I believe so, but I never checked it out. I judge it based on a bias from a movie that I read, based on my bias of a book that I read like over 10 years ago. So I may have a different reaction to it now, but like I said, I'm actually going to I'm going to reread that before the movie comes out to see if I have a different a different response to it this time. But yeah, I'll be looking. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Cool.
The next movie should be interesting. Don't Worry, Darling. It's directed by Olivia Wilde, which sounds cool. I'm glad she's doing a horror. Screenplay by Katie Silverman, based on a story by Carrie Van Dyke. The cast is Florence Pugh, one of our best, amazing actress. Love Florence Pugh. Harry Styles of One Direction as Jack. He's kind of fashioning himself into a serious actor these days. Chris Pine, another actor that I like, as Frank. Olivia Wilde. Gemma Chan as Shelley. Kiki Lane as Margaret. Nick Kroll as Bill. Sydney Chandler as Bunny. Alicia Heng as Rose. Douglas Smith as John. Kate Berlin as Peg. Asif Ali as Peter, Timothy Simmons as Dean, Ariel Stachel as Kevin, Dita Von Teese as a burlesque dancer. The premise is, it's a very simple premise. An unhappy housewife in the 1950s discovers a disturbing truth while her loving husband hides a dark secret. I know you're a big fan of this. I really enjoyed Olivia Wilde's film Booksmart. I thought it was a very creative comedy. It's not only it's funny, I judge comedies on a different standard than I do most movies. For the most part, as long as the comedy is funny and it makes me laugh, I tend to be more forgiving of the cinematic aspects of it. in terms of the cinematography and other aspects that I pay more attention to. But Booksmart was one of those movies that not only is it funny and it's funny and likable, I actually think it's very well directed with a very creative visual sense and really nice creative flourishes that Olivia Wilde threw in, like the moment where the girls start tripping on drugs together and they imagine themselves as these like Barbie dolls. Such a cool little sequence in the movie. So just by having her, seeing how she's going to apply that to a horror film has me excited. I'm definitely looking forward to this one.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say I feel personally that Booksmart, for what it is, it's one of the best movies of the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just pitch perfect. It's cinematic. It's funny. It's touching.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's original. And I think Olivia Wilde just showed that she was borderline masterful, I think, in that movie. So the fact that she goes from that to a period piece horror film, I could not be more excited about. Because if she brings that same sense of originality and same kind of type of energy to a horror film, it could be great, especially with Florence Pugh at the head of the cast.
Oh yeah, I love Florence Pugh. I mean, there's a lot of good actors in here. I mean, Chris Pine is here as well. I believe this is the movie that I'm not 100% sure that Shia LaBeouf got kicked off of.
Yes, because of his behavior on set.
Behavior on set, because I think she has like a no asshole policy. Yeah, so good for you, Olivia. The next movie is Dark Harvest. This is directed by David Slade, and this is hold on, why did I miss the screenplay? But it is based on Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. I'll get the screenwriter right now. It stars Casey Likes as Richie Shepherd, Imari Crutchfield as Kelly Haynes, Dustin Senthammer as Sawtooth / October Boy, Ezra Buzzington as the farmer, and Jeremy Davies. Let's see. The synopsis is: every fall in a small Midwestern town, a supernatural specter named Sawtooth Jack arises from the cornfields and approaches the town's church, where violent gangs of teenage boys hungrily await their chance to confront the legendary nightmare in an annual harvest rite of life and death. Richie Shepherd lives in the shadow of his big brother, who won last year's October prize, to get his ticket out of town. To prove himself and join his brother, Richie pairs up with restless dreamers Kelly Haynes, who will do anything to escape the dead-end town. David Slade, the director of this, is primarily why I'm looking forward to this. He's mostly known for Hard Candy, 30 Days of Night, and most horrifically, the Twilight Saga. Interesting. I do like Hard Candy, and I really do like 30 Days of Night.
Yes.
Yes, so just those two alone, that makes me look forward to. Let me see who the screenwriter for this is. 1 second. And the screenplay is by Michael Gilio, who has known for the Dungeons and Dragons film.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I like the director, aside from the fact that he did Twilight. I hate those movies. I'll admit I've only seen the first one in full, and the other ones I can only see like 10 minutes before I have to shut it off. I hate those movies. I appreciate what they did for horror and the audience that they serve on a certain level, and I have a respect for them, but I just don't like them. But it should be interesting to see what this is going to be like.
Well, fans of the Twilight books love those movies, so I guess he done his job. He serviced the fans really well. But 30 Days a Night is the movie that makes me excited for this one, and plus it's an old good old fashioned monster story.
Yeah. Did you like Hard Candy?
Yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah, I really like Hard Candy too. So
Patrick
like
Wilson.
Yeah. Patrick Wilson and Elliot Page. What I like about those two movies is you got one really intense. I mean, it's a vampire movie, but it feels like an attack monster movie. And his other horror film is more of a psychological head game horror. So he has range as a filmmaker in terms of what he can pull off in the genre.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and Twilight, which I guess falls into the horror genre too. So he can even do the romantic stuff.
Yeah.
So this next movie is Halloween Ends, directed by David Gordon Green, based on characters by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, written by David Gordon Green, the director, Chris Bernier, Paul, Brad Logan, and Danny McBride. This is going to be starring Jamie Lee Curtis once again as Laurie Strode, Kyle Richards reprising her role from Halloween 78, and Halloween Kills as Lindsay Wallace, Andy Matichik as Ellison, Nick Castle as the Shape, James Jude Courtney as the Shape. James Jude Courtney is the actor who's played him in the last two movies. For the most part, Nick Castle is the original The Shape, who also plays him in certain scenes in the new Halloween movies. And I don't know if you heard about this. There's a rumor that Sarah Michelle Gellar is probably going to have a part in here. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I heard something about that.
It's an undisclosed role. This is a weird one because this doesn't have a Wikipedia page, and its IMDb is scant. It is barely giving you like the like the main cast. They don't even have like listed out like the big cast like they normally do. And I find that strange for a horror movie this high profile and this close to release. It's coming out this year for there not to be that much information on it on the internet. And the only premise that I could find is just, it's very bland. The saga of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode comes to a spine-chilling climax in the final installment of the franchise, which I imagine that's what it was going to be in the first place. I don't know. I love Halloween 2018. I like Halloween Kills. I don't know if I would say it's like a good movie, but I like it as a slasher movie, just as a basic level slasher. I think it's very enjoyable, and I still enjoy that iteration of Michael Myers. I hope they can live up to Halloween 2018 with this one, or take it in a new direction, because Halloween 2018 was such a good like way to reboot the franchise, a way to bring Michael Myers back in a way that felt organic. Halloween Kills is practically a remake of Halloween 2, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a Halloween 2 remake. This one is supposed to have elements of a coming-of-age story, and I know it's supposed to take place years after the last events, unlike the first two, Halloween and Halloween Kills, take place on the same night. This one's supposed to take place a couple years later. So I hope that means that, and the coming-of-age element means that they can do something really interesting with the franchise and end it off with a bang. Regardless, this is still my preferred Michael Myers timeline, in spite of my reservations about Halloween Kills.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things I really didn't like at all about Halloween Kills, but there is a lot of things I did like about it. But I'm hoping that Halloween Kills just suffered from being the middle movie in a trilogy. I think a lot of my problems with it stem from that. So I'm hoping they'll fix whatever went wrong in Halloween Kills for this one and bring it back around to what they did in 2018. And something even a little more original than that. So I still got my hopes high for this one to be a good ending to the trilogy.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Something I'm not looking forward to, but it's a big horror release coming out, is Jeepers Creepers Reborn. And actually, I apologize. I forgot to give the release date. Halloween Ends comes out on October 14th. Dark Harvest comes out on September 23rd, as well as Don't Worry, Darling on September 23rd. I feel like I just skipped over the release dates. I apologize to listeners. And Salem's Lot is September 9th. I don't know why I just did that really bad. Okay, I think I got reminded right now, because I'm now into the section where the horror movies that I'm going to be finishing off with are all 2022 horror movies that don't have official release dates yet. So the first major one is Jeepers Creepers Reborn. Directed by Timo Vorensolo, who's most responsible for the movies Star Wreck, Part 4, Star Wreck Part 5, Lost Contact, Star Wreck in the Pink Ring. I've never heard of these movies. Iron Sky, The Coming Race, and Jeepers Creepers Reborn, and a to-be-announced movie called The Ark in Iron Sky Story. And he has another project he's coming out called I Killed Adolf Hitler. Okay. Written by Sean Michael Argo. It stars Sidney Craven as Lane, Emeron Adams as Chase, Gabriel Freilich as Sam, Peter Brook as Stu. Has Dee Wallace in it. That's something to look forward to. Gary Graham, Ocean Navarro, Matt Barkley, Alexander Halsall, Jody McMullen, Georgia Goodman, Jaru Benjamin, and Sophie Walker. The premise is the Horror Hound Festival is being held for the first time in Louisiana. Among the attendees are Chase and his girlfriend Lane, who begins to experience unexplained premonitions and disturbing visions associated with the town's past and the creeper. I like the original Jeepers Creepers movie. I don't think the sequel's good. I know it has a lot of fans in it, but it just seems to me like it's just relentless shit. It doesn't. And I'm sorry. I don't like using that word to describe movies. I apologize, but I caught myself. Um, the original. I got to be honest with you. I've been kind of soured on this franchise ever since the controversy with the filmmaker, and I learned more about his pedophilia.
Yeah,
And
pederast piece of shit.
yeah, and the shit that he got away with on set. And it bothers me that Francis Ford Coppola like produced it and kind of like let it go by on his ranch, and that bothered Francis Ford Coppola. God bless him, one of the greatest filmmakers to have ever lived. I don't understand why he's co-signing that crap. But I don't know. I mean, I like that Dee Wallace is in it, and I like the Horror Hound Festival element, the fact that it's going to be plugged a little bit more into the horror scene at a horror fest. So that's kind of a different take on it. I don't know. I don't really have very much excitement for this, just to be honest. It's hard for me to get excited for this franchise now anymore.
Yeah, I would have to overcome my bias of the franchise period because I didn't even watch part 3. I'll probably never watch it. I don't care. But I feel for this director having to take over a movie with this much baggage.
Yeah, that's the one thing that keeps me positive. I mean, we're gonna check it out. We're horror people. We run a horror podcast. We can't avoid it. It's not high on my list. But personally, I do feel bad for the people taking this on. But hopefully, it shouldn't reflect on them. You know, creator is not the you. I mean, that's a little sketchy topic. I'm not going to get into here the idea of separating the art from the artist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't feel like getting that into that here. But I think we should give it a chance. We'll see how it turns out. I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't muster up very much enthusiasm.
Me neither.
Another to be announced film that I can muster a lot of enthusiasm for, just because I can muster enthusiasm for this franchise at the drop of a dime, is Evil Dead Rise, written and directed by Lee Cronin.
Yes.
It stars Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, Lily Sullivan as Beth, Gabriel Eccles, Morgan Davies, Neil Fisher, Mia Chalice as Jessica. This is Lee Cronin did The Hole in the Ground, which we talked about on the podcast. It's not one of the most original horror movies. I think it has kind of like a predictable element to it. But boy, is it so well directed, strictly from a filmmaking point of view. So it'll be interesting to see that filmmaker apply their craft to an Evil Dead film. The premise is, in Evil Dead Rise, a road-weary Beth pays an overdue visit to her older sister Ellie, who is raising 3 kids of her own in a cramped LA apartment. The sisters' reunion is cut short by the discovery of a mysterious book deep in the bowels of Ellie's building, giving rise to flesh-possessing demons and thrusting Beth into a primal battle for survival as she is faced with the most nightmarish version of motherhood imaginable. That's a synopsis from Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema and HBO Max. I believe this is going to be an HBO Max as well as a theatrical release. I don't know how it's going to tie into the franchise. I know it's not a reboot. I know that they're trying to. It comes after the Ash vs. Evil Dead series, which was cut short prematurely, and I loved it. I wonder if they're going to incorporate any of the characters. I know that Bruce Campbell says that he's done with that character, and I understand because he's such an action-oriented character, and he is getting older. It's probably a little bit hard to still be playing such a badass, basically horror super. He's a superhero, basically. What Bruce Campbell as Ash is.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it with whatever they do. I just am curious how they're going to define this within the larger Evil Dead mythology, because it's got 3 films, a TV series, and a remake reboot that was actually successful. And they didn't go forward. Like they were originally going to do sequels, and for whatever reason, they didn't go forward with it, because it always kind of caught me off guard, because it actually was a financial success and a critical success. But I'm just curious how they're going to fit this into the larger Evil Dead mythology. If they're going to be nodding to Mia from the Evil Dead remake, how Ash is going to be involved, if he's going to be a legend, what this has to do with Ash versus the Evil Dead. I love that show. I'm really attached to the characters, and I hope somehow they make an appearance here or surprise us. But regardless, anytime anything Evil Dead comes up, I'll be there to see it. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, this is one of my most anticipated horror films of the year, mostly because the writer director. I think it's a great choice for writer director for a new Evil Dead film. And my mouth waters at the concept of Deadites being released in the city. Yes.
Yeah,
Bring it.
in more of a rural setting. I mean, actually, they had elements of it of like Michigan and the Ash versus Evil Dead, but never like a big metropolitan area.
Yeah.
It's grounds for a lot more havoc than would be normal. The next movie is another one I'm looking forward to. It's a remake of Hellraiser titled Hellraiser. This one is directed by David Bruckner, and it's based on a story by David S. Goyer. This stars Odessa Azion as Riley, who is not a character that is in Hellraiser, so I wonder if they're renaming anybody in this one. Jamie Clayton as Pinhead, a female Pinhead. It also stars Brandon Flynn, Drew Starkey, Selena Lowe, and Hayam Abbas, and these are all undisclosed roles. This one has a little bit of a spotty history. Clive Barker sold the rights to Hellraiser, which was based on his short novel or his novella, the Hellbound Heart, which I actually reread this year. This is an excellent novella. He's been trying to get this remade for years, and he's been waiting for the rights to revert back to him. And there's been a lot of stop and go. For a while, this was going forward at Dimension Films, and it was going to be directed by Pascal Laguerre, the director of Incident in a Ghostland and Martyrs, which I actually think that's a really good choice for a franchise that's so based on pain and
yeah, exactly.
So, but he actually left because the Weinsteins apparently wanted to turn it more into a teen scream, which does not really fit the vibe of Hellraiser at all. Or to be honest, it doesn't really fit any of Clive Barker's properties. That is not really his style as a teen screen. So this has had like a spotty history. There is a point where Clive Barker was going to return to direct it, but he has a lot of health issues, so he's unable to do that now. They were going to bring Doug Bradley back as Pinhead. That didn't really work out. And finally, it seems like it's going to be the new one is going to be made. This one is going to be a Hulu film, which is pretty interesting. It's going to be released to Hulu. Clive Barker is signed on to this movie as an executive producer, and he's very excited about it. And that just his involvement is enough to get me looking forward to this, because I'm a fucking Clive Barker fanatic. Anybody who knows me knows that.
Yeah.
One of the controversies that people keep bringing up is that Jamie Clayton is Pinhead, who's going to be cast as a female Pinhead. I'm getting sick of people fucking complaining about that, like it's some kind of gender swap because it's we're trying to appeal to the wokeness and the SJWs. Pick up a fucking book and open your damn eyes, you fucking morons. In the original Hellbound Heart, which the Hellraiser is based on, Pinhead is actually a female. It's actually never specified, but they're described. All the Cenobites are described as androgynous, and when they talk about Pinhead speaks in a very high-pitched, girly, feminine voice. And everybody who encounters Pinhead in the novel assumes Pinhead to be a woman. The reason Clive Barker switched it for the original movie was because the standard was a male slasher, like a male icon. You got your Freddy Kruegers, your Michaels, your Jasons. So he was trying to make it more commercially viable. So this isn't really a switch. This is actually going back to the source material and making it more faithful to what the original book was. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited for this movie. I'm a big Clive Barker fan, so anytime any of his properties gets adapted, I'm always going to be there first in line. So we'll see how this one goes.
Yeah, female Pinhead and closer to the source material is all I needed to know, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah. The next movie is Prey, directed by Dan Trachtenberg and written by Patrick Ellison. It's based on characters by Jim Thomas and John Thomas. Prey is the latest entry in the Predator franchise. Did you know that there's a new Predator movie coming out?
I just found out this week.
So Amber Mindhunter as Neuro, as one of the stars. She's going to be playing a Comanche warrior who protects her tribe against a predator. Also stars Dan Liegro and Dakota Beavers. The idea behind this one is going to be a prequel to the other films in this franchise and will showcase the Predator and his first journey into Earth. This, along with Hellraiser, is also Hulu released. So it's going to be released on Hulu in summer 2022. We don't know what the exact date is, but we know it's going to be in the summer. And it has a PG-13 rating. I don't know.
That makes it kind of iffy, yeah.
Every time they kind of and look, I don't have a problem with PG-13 horror. I think there's plenty of PG-13 horror movies that are scary. They're scary in specific ways, but that's not really what the Predator franchise is. A lot of it comes from its visceral qualities, and from the level of violence that you see. So I'm not a fan of when they soften these kind of hard R-rated franchises from the 80s and kind of like soften it up. So I don't know if I'm really looking forward to this one that much. What about you?
This one could go either way. Like almost every film that shot off from the Predator franchise hasn't been that great since Predator 2. I think Predator 2 was the last really good one.
Yeah. So Dan Trachtenberg, the director of this, did direct 10 Cloverfield Lane. Did you ever see that one?
Yeah, I like that one.
That's actually my favorite Cloverfield movie. And I think if you remove the Cloverfield aspects from it, I think it actually functions as a very good psychological horror film, independent of aliens. And John Goodman was really good in that. So was Mary Elizabeth Winstead. So I think that's the one thing that keeps me hopeful for this is I actually really enjoyed the director's work. So I'm staying positive for it.
Well, I take that back what I said about Predator 2. There hasn't been a good Predator movie.
Yeah.
I forgot about The Predator from 2018, which everybody hated, but I loved it. It was directed by Shane Black, the director of Lethal Weapon, and it was written by Fred Decker, the writer-director of Monster Squad. So I just love those guys' style anyway. It's kind of a quirky style. It's kind of a like this snappy dialogue. It's kind of it's got a cheesy element to it, like a campy element, but I think that's part of the charm of these guys. So a lot of people didn't like The Predator, but I liked it. So I just hope this one's at least as good as that one. Yep.
We'll see. The next movie is Firestarter, a remake of the Stephen King book, the Stephen King movie. This one is directed by Keith Thomas, screenplay by Scott Teems. It stars Zac Efron as Andrew Andy McGee. Michael Greyeyes as John Rainbird, Sydney Lemon as Victoria Vicky McGee, Ryan Kiera Armstrong as Charlene Charlie McGee, and Gloria Rubin. The premise is a young man must protect his daughter after she develops pyrokinesis and is hunted by a secret government agency known as the Shop that intends to capture and control her. I have to admit, I've never read the book. This is one Stephen King that I've never read. And I haven't seen the original movie with Drew Barrymore since I was very, very young. So I have very spotty memory of that movie. I don't remember I don't know what I would think of it if I saw it now. What do you think of the original Firestarter?
It's been a while since I've seen it. I haven't seen it since back in the day, but I always liked it.
You do?
I mean, it's kind of a movie that's actually due for a remake, really. Because it's been long enough. The movie made an impact without being like a huge, classic. Mm-hmm. So I think it's due for it, especially Zac Efron. I kind of like him. He takes some weird curves in his career.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the hate that Zac Efron gets is just because he's Zac Efron. He's the Disney boy, the Disney hunk. So of course people are gonna.
But I'm not too excited about the writer Scott Teems because he just wrote Halloween Kills, and that was one of the biggest problems with Halloween Kills is the script. So I don't know if he had something to do with that, or if that was his part, or if that was David Gordon Green. Or
I mean, one thing though, I mean, in all fairness, it is his script, but he's working from somebody else's source material. He's working from the mind of a genius. So I think just by having Stephen King's story, and again, I haven't read this book, but having a Stephen King story as the backbone should at least elevate whatever they do with it.
And he's also writing the new Exorcist, apparently.
Cool.
So many pre-existing IPs this year. Pretty much every year has these bunch of pre-existing IPs to come out.
They're digging deeper too, because before the IPs were like classic beloved franchises and properties, and now they're really digging deep of fires. Like you said, I mean, I know it's a known movie within the horror community, but I don't think it ever became like a classic or ever attained the kind of cult status that a lot of Stephen King based films have.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is due for a remake.
Yeah, because I remember that one mostly being a vehicle for a young Drew Barrymore.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that helped put her star up there.
The next movie is one that we've been talking about this for like over a year now. Both, I know we're both totally excited for this. Terrifier 2, written and directed and produced by Damien Leone, the same auteur who directed the original Terrifier. David Howard Thornton returns as Art the Clown. We also have Lauren Lavera as Sienna Shaw, Elliot Fulham as Jonathan Shaw, Sarah Voigt as Barbara, Kaylee Hyman as Brooke, Cassie Hartnett as Ellie, Samantha Scafidi as Victoria Hayes, and the legendary Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp as Miss Principe or Principe. I don't know. Looks like it says principal to me. This is the premise for it. After mutilating soul survivor Victoria Hayes and committing suicide upon police confrontation, Art is resurrected by a sinister being a year later and begins a hunt for two unsuspecting siblings in the Miles County area on Halloween night. This was one of those movies that had this Kickstarter campaign that was phenomenally successful, and we talked about it at the time and how quick they were able to raise money. And I think for me, Terrifier is probably one of the I'd say Art the Clown just in general is, I think, one of the greatest modern horror icons. And for me, it was just a really great to see a nice 80s throwback slasher like that. Bloody, visceral, satisfying, well-filmed, a little gross, kind of offensive, in your face. Definitely not for mainstream taste. I'll say that. They didn't go out of their way to appeal to mainstream audiences. But I'm excited because the budget is being upped, and we had David Howard Thornton, Art the Clown, episode 67. If you want to check out our interview with David Howard Thornton, he discusses the fundraising process for Terrifier 2 and what went into both movies. But what really makes me excited for this is the character of Sienna Shaw, who Damien Leone is. This is what he had to say about it. That was my favorite character that I ever wrote, ever. So I knew the character was always there. I knew one day I was going to bring that character back and finally make a movie with her. So she is the heart and soul of part 2, and everything revolves around that character. So I always knew that the seed was there. And when we had David Howard Thornton on the podcast, he was just singing her praises as well. So I'm really excited to see where they go with this movie. Love Art the Clown, modern horror icon.
And just from what I've seen, like I've seen 4 minutes of footage from it when I went to Texas Frightmare, and just from the trailer and everything, she looks like an instant star, Lauren Lavera. You can really see why Damien Leone is so excited about this character, and her look is really cool. She has a really natural way of acting. She carries herself really well. The young boy in it looks like he's really good, up and coming actor. And they actually raised the original made a huge impact on the horror genre with only $35,000 budget, and then it made such an impact that in no time they raised like 10 times the budget of the first one for the crowdfunding campaign, and then they try to raise more so they can get this big impressive set piece on it. And they said think of the Carrie prom scene with art involved. Mm-hmm. So it's like a big elaborate set piece group of killings that's going to happen. So there's so many things to get excited about on this one, and Damien Leone is really anxious to prove himself on this one, because a lot of people complained that Terrifier didn't have enough story. Who needs story in a nasty slasher? A nasty killer clown slasher, who needs story? You just need to show good stalking of a killer clown with unsuspecting victims,
Yeah.
And this one, they're going to expand the mythology, and I don't think, knowing Damien Leone, I don't think it's going to dilute it at all, the impact of it.
what I find kind of funny about people asking for more of a story from it, these are the same people that act like Friday the 13th is like one of the greatest films ever made. It's not. It's fun, but it's not. Those movies don't have very much story, and it's weird that it comes from people who mostly don't expect that out of slashers, but for some reason have a different standard for Terrifier, and I don't understand it. I'm like, you were perfectly content with a lot of slashers that don't have any story. I don't know why this one needs more developed story for you.
I know the first Friday the 13th has actually no story until the last 30 minutes, and the whole story is told in the last 30 minutes of the film.
Mm-hmm. And most of the sequels are just kind of repeating the same formula: Jason stalking people through the woods,
Yeah,
or wherever they may be at that time. So we'll see. You know how horror fans can be sometimes.
yeah.
Now, we're closing off with what is probably the most controversial release. The Monsters, written and directed by Rob Zombie, horror auteur behind House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, 3 from Hell, The Lords of Salem, 31, Halloween 2007, and Halloween 2, 2009. This one is it's written and directed by Rob Zombie. Based on The Munsters, which were created by Alan Burns and Chris Hayward, starring Sherry Moon Zombie as Lily Munster. Now, this is where a lot of the controversy is coming in. Jeff Daniel Phillips as Herman Munster. Daniel Roebuck as Grandpa. Richard Brake as Dr. Henry Augustus Wolfgang. I like Richard Brake. Sylvester McCoy as Igor, and Catherine Schell as Zoya Krupp. All the only premise I could find is that it's just a modernization of the classic Munsters television series. Here's one thing I do know about Rob Zombie, and I understand where some of the controversy comes from. What we're most familiar with as far as Rob Zombie's filmmaking is mostly a very backwoods style of horror. Killer clowns, nasty, dirty, filthy rednecks. Definitely, I feel like his entire filmography is something of a tribute to Tobe Hooper and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with a lot more vulgarity thrown in. And
like a 70s grindhouse type of
70s
style.
grindhouse, sleaze. And admittedly, Rob Zombie has made films I don't like. 31, I'm sorry, it's an awful movie. I do not like it one bit. It is straight bad. Halloween 2, I cannot get behind. I'm mixed on the Halloween remake. I like it on a certain level, but it definitely has some drawbacks. On the other hand, The Devil's Rejects is a fucking masterpiece. I think that's one of the greatest horror movies of the 21st century. One of the greatest horror movies of the past 20 years. Brutal, sadistic, raw, mean. House of a Thousand Corpses is excellent. So is 3 from Hell, which is a great sequel. It's just a great trilogy in general. And I love The Lords of Salem, which is probably Rob Zombie's most different film. And it's funny because everybody complains that Rob Zombie only makes one type of film, and the other time he actually does do something a little bit different. People don't respond to it, so I don't really feel like he can't win either way. I love Lords of Salem. I think that's such an underrated horror film. And I admit I wasn't a big fan of it when I first saw it, but it's one of those movies that every viewing I get more out of it than I did at the last time. And things that never worked for me on the first viewing work for me on a lot of rewatches. And I get it. The Monsters is horror, but it's very family friendly. And that's not the wheelhouse that Rob Zombie normally dwells in. So I could see why there's some hesitancy with some people. On the other hand, I know that he's a huge fan, that Rob Zombie, as much as he tries to like imitate like the 70s grindhouse Tobe Hooper aesthetic, he's a big fan of classic horror and Universal monsters and the Munsters, and I dare say it, like cute horror, cuter old school horror. And you even see it in his films. I mean, even though his characters are always trashy and nasty, they end up watching stuff like the Munsters or like old Universal horror movies. So I think that there's a genuine passion there, and that alone makes me excited for it. And look, if you don't like it, that's fine. Just go watch the original The Munsters. There's nothing stopping you. People acting like, I'm tired of fanboys cry like every time a new property gets remade, their childhood is over. It's being ruined. If that's what ruins your childhood, you had a shitty childhood, and I'm really sorry about that. But And I think a bigger part of the controversy comes from Sherry Moon Zombie as Lily Munster. And again, I kind of see the controversy. Of course, it's Rob Zombie casting his wife again, and I get it. But I think she's a much better actress than people give him credit for. That's his muse. I mean, if you want to use a more pretentious example, um, Federico Fellini used his wife in a bunch of stuff, and nobody complains. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a muse or putting your having a muse or your wife being your artistic inspiration. In fact, I actually think that's kind of cool. It's a little sweet.
And she's never been just completely miscast in a role that she sucked in. I think she's pretty much proved herself with every single role. I don't think she's ever done a bad job on any of her roles.
It's funny, and the movie 31, my least favorite Rob Zombie movie, by a whopping margin. She is the only thing that's I like about it that's redeemable. In fact, I think without her, it would be borderline unwatchable.
So I get the hesitancy about the Munsters because Rob Zombie's sweaty 70s grindhouse style doesn't seem to fit with the aesthetic of the Munsters. I get that. But he loves the Munsters. This is his passion project. He's not going to shit all over it and shoehorn his style of his other movies into this one. I don't think.
I don't think so. And it's not like an R-rated thing either. He can't do it like that. It's going to be on Peacock. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I'm going to give it a chance. I know it's Rob Zombie stepping outside of what he normally does, maybe his comfort zone, but that's a good thing. I like when artists kind of step outside their comfort zone and try a little different flavor and add something different to their repertoire. And for better or whatever you think of Rob Zombie, and I know he's such a controversial figure in the horror community, whether you love him or hate him, he's probably one of the most individual and original voices in horror working today. I think I appreciate as an artist that even when I don't like his movies like 31 or Halloween 2, I don't like them because they're exactly what they want to be. He's an uncompromising artist, and whatever I don't like about those movies is deliberate. Maybe I think it's questionable, but it's very deliberate. I don't think any of it happens by accident, and I don't think that there's enough. I think we need to cheer that on. I don't want to shit on horror filmmakers who have original visions and who are uncompromising. Of course, it's not always going to work out. Not everything is going to be a home run, and not everything is going to work. But it's the type of creativity and passion and originality that I think horror fans should be cheering on, not shitting on.
And he chose some good character actors to play Herman Munster and Grandpa as well. So
yeah,
I know they're going to do a good job in the roles.
Yeah. So looking forward to it regardless of what anyone says. Like I said, if you don't like it, then just go back and watch the original show.
Yeah, so regardless, I think this is going to be a great year for horror. I mean, even if only half of those that we mentioned today end up being great, there's still all those that come out in between that we haven't even heard about yet. So I think it's going to be yet another great year for horror.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So now we want to close off our 2022 horror preview with just to tell you about a couple of movies that you should be looking out for in 2022 on the lower indie scale. Foreign movies too.
Yes, and we're extremely honored that the producer sent these two movies to us, asking us to review them. They're both available on Tubi. They're both foreign films. One of them's from Brazil, and the other one's from Japan. And I was pleasantly surprised at how good both of these movies were, especially the first one, My Dead Ones. My Dead Ones was originally released in 2018 in Brazil. It's also known as David's Secret. It's written, directed, and edited by Diego Freitas. It's his first feature, unbelievably first feature. Wow. Co-written by Gustavo Rosev. It stars Nicholas Pratis as David. He's awesome. You cannot take your eyes off this kid. And Andre Henges as Jonathan. And that's another one. Just two charismatic actors, each of them completely different, but each of them had their own little nuance about their characters. They're both really fun to watch, really interesting and compelling. The cinematography in this was outstanding by Kawi Zilli. Check out the cinematography on this movie. It's absolutely beautiful. It's striking. It jumps off. It jumps off the screen as if it's another character in the movie. And also, I can't go without mentioning the score by Paulo Bieto. extremely competent and accomplished score. It's layered, it's interesting, it's not a typical score at all. And the synopsis on this one is: behind the looks of a shy film student, David hides an obscure past that is about to be revealed. Strange visions awaken the murderer in him, and he goes on a killing spree, films the murders, and uploads them to the dark web. A mysterious stranger could either be his salvation or expose his murderous rage to the world. Right away, it's very crisp and cinematic right from the opening shot, as the main character kind of narrates a flashback from his childhood, and that flashback is kind of woven into the rest of the film. So he's a film student who films everything. He deals with bullies and finds someone who's very curious about him with the guy Jonathan. Amazing imagery, and the drama is just as amazing as the imagery is. So it's not just a movie that's beautiful to look at without substance. It has just as much substance as it does rich imagery. It pulls you in when he visits this old lady and talks about his past. And then the kills are more shocking because the buildup has an innocent quality to it. Because he doesn't approach his victims as if he's a killer. He approaches them as if he's curious, as if he's trying to figure out what's going on in his head, as if, and he acts as if these characters have no past with him. He acts like he's trying to he's invested in what they have to say. He wants to find out about them, but then all of a sudden the scenes turn murderous, and it's pretty disturbing because of the juxtaposition of the innocent quality of his curiosity that turns into murder in front of your eyes before you know it. And then what's really interesting is as he starts killing, he starts hanging out with his dead victims, and these scenes are always creepy, always surprisingly reflective, and they also have an innocent quality to it. Because no matter how sinister things get, there's some kind of innocence to him, like a curiosity to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the story kind of morphs into him going after a taxi driver when he finds out that he killed his own daughter in a drunk driving accident. And then the whole sequence deals with guilt and David making him pay. But
don't give away too much of it, though.
Yeah, but David seems to also have some guilt of his own, and you don't know why yet. Mm-hmm. So the story's unfolding very much in a conventional way in front of your eyes, with something very unconventional under the surface that doesn't come up until the last act.
What I appreciate about this movie, and what's really, really rare in movies these days, is that, I mean, it's not a reflection. Movies can be good regardless if they function like this or not. But a lot of movies, when they start, you can kind of tell where it's going, and you know what the story is. And I heard Quentin Tarantino, I'm just paraphrasing something Tarantino once said, is like, a good movie is a story that you actually have to watch all the way through to the end to like understand it. It's not something that you should know within 30 minutes where everything is, where it's going. It is one of those rare films that you actually have to watch the entire thing to actually understand what it is and what's going on and what it's about, and for a lot of its themes and ideas to crystallize to the audience. And I appreciate that it keeps you engaged in a way where you have to keep watching to understand everything. It's not something that's predictable. It's fairly original in a world that's, and it's hard to do anything original. That's not a knock on anybody who makes derivative films. I mean, lots of great derivative movies, but it's really difficult to try to formulate a story that we haven't seen, or to formulate a story that you actually have to see all the way through to the end to completely get it. And I think this movie does that really well. It's not a typical horror movie in any way. It is a horror movie, but it feels very different, a different flavor of horror than we're used to seeing, I think. It's also a surprise. Like, I know it's a low budget movie, but as I was watching it, it never really occurred to me, or I never even really thought about the budget. It has a kind of sheen and a polish to it, and good choice of locations, and good violent scenes, and lots of imaginative storytelling, and it's pretty sad too. I actually think the main character is a little tragic and it's a little heartbreaking. This disturbed individual, obviously a very damaged and disturbed individual, but somebody who I think the audience can empathize with on a certain level.
Yeah, it's a $450,000 budget, but it looks at least a couple million, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Has such a polish to it, and that polish doesn't take away any of the grittiness, by the way, either.
Mm-hmm.
You still feel these deaths just as much. And then I love how it's not spoon-fed to you. Like, both of these movies that we're reviewing today, I think they both respect the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
These directors respect the viewer, and they know that the viewer is not going to get impatient with this, and that they don't need the story spoon-fed to them. That you know, fans like us love to see the story unfold like this without it being spelled out for us. And that's what I loved about this. And then we slowly start to see that David is connected somehow with the victims, and it's never let on through the whole thing. So all these things kind of come up organically. And then you have this compelling drama that's very involving, very riveting type of drama that pulls you into this guy's life. But then when you're in the middle of feeling the drama, you're feeling all the emotions and what's going on. And then you have something like this face smash scene. He smashes this guy's face, and it's probably one of the most realistic face smashes I've ever seen. Because he's coming down on this guy, and you see his face. They show it from a profile, and you see his face completely cave in. And it doesn't look like an appliance at all. It doesn't look like CG. You just see this guy right on camera, his face cave in from the smashes. Just very impressive, and it's super shocking because you're watching this beautiful, dramatic, nuanced movie, and then all of a sudden you see this gnarly face smash. And then I love how the relationship between David and John gets kind of erotic, and that's kind of compelling. That pulls you in more, and it kind of makes you feel like
it becomes weirder once you realize the nature of their relationship, though. The erotic element seems creepier once the movie is over, though.
Yeah, because it seems that the relationship between David and John kind of grounds the movie a little bit, but then even that goes off the rails later on. And then in between you see David's visions, and his visions get further disorienting, but they're all just as beautifully filmed. His visions are almost like a dreamlike kind of fairy tale setting. And then I somehow felt for David in the climax. After watching him do all these horrible things, I still felt empathy for him. I mean, his world was crashing down, and then all this is happening, and then there's one last twist, the big twist at the end. So I thought the whole setting for the climax was beyond beautiful. I mean, I thought the rest of the movie was beautiful, but when it got to the wooded area, the climax, wow, I wanted to step into my TV and be in that area. It looked so cool, and I love that type of filmmaking where it's very beautiful, very colorful, but there's something also dark about it. It's very cool. Such a smart but fucked up ending I thought was perfect. Diego Frieta's next film is actually a romantic comedy called Beyond the Universe, and I can totally see this director kind of branch off into any genre he wants, because there's so many genres at play in this one, and horror is just one of them.
Yeah, at some point it seems like it could be a sweet romance, and then it doesn't really turns into something really wrong. But there is a moment with the girl, with the aspiring architect, where it seems like this could turn into something sweet, and it literally does the exact opposite.
Yeah, the relationship with the girl, there's a sweet element to it. The relationship with John, there's a sweet element to it. Even the relationship with the old lady, it seems sweet at first. And it's just...
No, it's not.
No. But I thought it's very cinematic. It's a riveting crime drama and extremely effective horror that it's in your face but still feels like it snuck up behind you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the horror is very much, that they don't shy away from it. They don't cut away from the horror. The horror is right there in front of your face, but it still seems to creep up behind you because you're so invested in the drama and the story. I love how it puts you in the mind of a killer and almost makes you feel his justification. You kind of feel for him because his his murders stem from a psychological torment. You know, it's not like him being a sadistic, evil person.
Yeah.
But I loved everything about this film. It's available on Tubi. Definitely check this one out.
Yeah, good movie too.
Yes, very refreshing, very beautiful, very original. A great approach, a good mixture of genres, a great use of horror mixed with the drama, and I can't tell you enough how beautiful the cinematography is. I just loved it. And I loved it so much that I really want my next movie to look like this one.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
So we ready for the next one?
Yeah, I'm ready.
And our next final movie is Mimicry Freaks from 2019. It's a movie from Japan. It's produced, written, directed, filmed, and edited by Shugo Fuji. And I'm pretty impressed with this guy, because this one, a decidedly much lower budget than the last one, much less of a gloss. The cinematography is more wild, all handheld, but it works. It stars Tatsuji Sugiyama, Tomoya Mochizuki, and Daiki Tanaka. So the synopsis is: Fuma wakes up in bed in the middle of the woods with his son Ren when a traditional Japanese monster, Narhamage, attacks. As he begins repeatedly waking up with his son in a white room, a wedding planner takes the two lovers and the bride's father to a wedding ceremony hall nearby, and the fate of all of the characters start intertwining. And to give you an idea of what this movie is like, the tagline is the American-style horror that can only be made in Japan. So they actually tried to take, you know, the spirit of an American horror film and do it in a Japanese style. For what it is, I think it's impressive, layered, and the score is vaguely industrial sounding. The score is from Kenji Ueda, but I think I like this score even more than the last one. This one's a little more raw than the last one is, but it's so impressive. It calls attention to itself at just the right times, and then it blends into the background at just the right times. I just really liked the original feel of this score, and I thought it did a lot for the narrative. Like I said, right away, this feels much more raw, low budget, all handheld camera. It gets weird and disorienting right away. You don't know what the hell's going on half the time. We shift from inside Puma's mind to real life. And then real life is so strange that you can't tell the difference sometimes between real life and what's in his head. And then you start getting the monster attacks, and it turns into like a monster movie, but there's still that crazy narrative going on in the background. And then this one, it feels like very raw, very low budget, but I don't know if you agree, but when it came to the kills, extremely competently filmed, very, like, even when the budget wouldn't allow them to show the horror right in front of your face, it's just this creative shot selection that makes you feel the kills. Like when the cops gets his head severed by the monster with this primitive tool. Wow. I was wowed by such a crazy kill with this low budget. And by the way, the monster has a very cool looking mask and weapon as well.
This is a much nastier, more visceral horror movie than My Dead Ones. It's more of a straight up horror movie, that's for sure. And it's very, there's a level of sadism, I would say, in some of the kill scenes, and some of it has elements of like torture. Pretty imaginative and original and wild and unpredictable. Not quite as nuanced and layered as My Dead Ones. I actually prefer that one to this one, but still definitely worth your time. Very it's hard not to get into it because it's so visceral and so fast moving, and it's like one of those movies that shakes you right away. And obviously I don't think everybody's gonna like it, but whatever you think about it, you're probably not going to be bored by it. There's too much going on for like boredom to ever set in at any point. It's too in your face for it to ever get boring.
It's extremely ambitious. I mean, that this writer director had a huge idea for this, and I don't even know how he packed this huge idea into such a small movie and make it this effective. And much like the last one, it doesn't spoon feed the story to you. I mean, you keep seeing the the father and his kid over and over again, and then the kid gets smarter. He gets more aware, and you don't know why. And then you start seeing these layers added to the score. That's like this tribal music starts coming in, makes you feel weird. And it's just like one weird disorienting scene after another, and it only occasionally grounds itself, but it grounds itself just enough to keep you invested in the story. I love the imagery of all the people hanging in bags in that room. It's just a bunch of people zipped up in bags just hanging from the ceiling. Awesome imagery, and it comes with a great story beat right there too. I love the kill where the monster completely cuts the front of a guy's face off. He takes that weapon and just cuts from here, because you see at a profile, his whole face just comes off. That's another impressive kill for such a low budget. And we slowly find out the full origin of the monster, and all the mimicry and the surreal imagery is completely explained without rushing it or having these huge exposition dumps. I thought the story unfolded very well, and it's a very intricate story, and it all felt organic. I never felt like one character was like dumping all the exposition on us at one time. But then you start seeing nods to American horror films, like the monster hangs a guy on a hook, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then I love that shocking twist. You have this big shocking twist of who's involved with all the killings, and then the nail gun's involved. And once that nail gun comes into play, then it sends the film into whole batshit overdrive. And then you get a spinal injection. It's a gnarly spinal injection, followed by two people being strapped into a fucking machine, making them fuck. You got a woman makes out with the monster, then he rips her tongue out, and when he rips her tongue out, like her guts and her throat's attached. That's another really impressive kill for the low budget. And then you get some more nods to American horror films. You get the ankle bite, followed by the possessed monster gouging someone's eyes out. It reminded me, it looks so much, even the shot selection was like Scotty's eyes being dug out in Evil Dead. Excellent premise, executed surprisingly well on such a low budget. It's all about forced evolution. That's all I'm going to say, without getting too much into spoilers. But the concept of forced evolution was really, really on display here. I thought it was really cool. And how cool was that quicksand scene?
Oh, yeah.
Where a guy starts sinking in quicksand. This guy throws him a rope. The rope is one of the other characters' intestines laid over on the side, and they didn't even realize their intestines were out. So the guy's like pulling himself out of the quicksand with the girl's intestines.
Once he realizes what he's pulling off of. Yeah. By the way, that tongue kill scene you were talking about, it looks like when they pulled the tongue out, they pulled that lady's entire insides out. Like the entire
that was gnarly, dude.
Yeah.
And then you got the monster ripping that person's body in half. And that one, you could tell it was fairly crude effects, but just this director's shot selection just made you feel it. It made you feel like you just watched a monster ripping a person in half. And that's very impressive for a low budget, especially with the handheld camera. I thought the climax was impressive because it has these insane visuals, brutal over-the-top kills with revealing twists and wrapping the story up well. It explains everything that you didn't know what the hell was going on through half of it, but just stick in, stay in for it because it explains everything by the end. The whole centipede thing made my skin crawl. They kept showing that damn centipede. But overall, I'm very impressed with this one. Like you said, I don't like it quite as much as the other one. But just because the other one was just more impressive, more cinematic, more layered. But this one was just so batshit insane. My dog's trying to
I'm pretty sure that a lot of the more grindhouse-loving horror fans will probably prefer this movie, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not nearly as polished and cinematic as my dead ones, but it makes up for it with an insane but intricate story. Surprisingly graphic kills. It has balls and a very clear vision of a very intricate concept. Sorry, my dog's kissing me in the face.
Okay.
He's getting very impatient. I know the podcast is going long, huh, buddy? He's got a cone on his head.
That's okay.
Say hi, Chucky. Hi, Boo.
Dog.
Okay, I'm almost done, buddy. I'm almost done, Boo.
So
Okay.
where can we watch this one at?
This one's also available on YouTube.
YouTube or Tubi?
Oh, sorry. My dog was distracting me. Tubi.
Tubi, okay. Tubi's always got some good stuff on.
Okay, we might want to wrap this up. This dog's not going to stay away.
Okay. Right. Well, that's all. Check out those movies and look out for everything in 2022. We hope you enjoyed our 2022 horror preview.
Yes, very excited about the year to come. And thank you again to the producers for sending us these movies. We might have the directors on pretty soon, so look out for that.
Yep. Till next week, folks. Happy horror.
Happy horror.